Part 2 of our series on rebuilding the electronic Rochester Quadrajet. I'm not going to try to describe every single thing that happens in this disassembly video. I mean, you can watch it with the sound off and pretty much see what we did. But I am going to try to provide a little bit more information when and only when I think that it would be helpful. He's pointing out there's kind of a little notch or a little bump that sticks out of the rod there, and he's showing you which end needs to be hooked into the carburetor for reassembly. Took us a while to figure out how to get the spring off, but it turned out that the key was having the shaft rotated to the right position. With it in the right position, you can pretty much just slide the spring right off the end of the shaft. And right now he's working on removing some of the external moving parts on the carburetor. I'm going to be very honest with everybody. We did not follow instructions, and we are not experts on rebuilding this Quadrajet. So we pretty much just attacked this in the order of, hey, what do we see that we can remove? There was no master plan, but it did actually kind of work. I mean, the one thing that I can tell you right now, spoiler alert, is that this car would not run. It wouldn't run at all before we rebuilt the carburetor. And when we got done, it purrs like a kitten. Sounds great, and it was a successful rebuild. One thing I'd like to mention right now is that these screws that he's taken out of the top, they're not all the same length. So one thing to pay attention to is, which length of screws came out of which holes. Right there, he's using a magnet to fetch a couple of screws that were down sort of inside the throttle body there, the primary area. And now he's starting to try to figure out how to lift the top layer of the carburetor off. At that point, he discovered that this vacuum hose that goes from the little metal tube to the little vacuum actuator still needed to be pulled off. You immediately can tell that this is an electronic Quadrajet by that blue connector. That's where the wiring for the solenoids, the idle mixture solenoids, that's where the connector is. It's that blue one. There's a whitish clear connector more in the background in this scene that is for the throttle position sensor. Okay, so the gasket's sticking a little bit there, but I believe he's going to go ahead and get the top layer off successfully right now. And now he's going to pull the accelerator pump, which was sitting there in the top. And with that out of the way, we can get the gasket off the top layer. Now he's going to pull a little green plastic piece that I believe it actually drives that accelerator pump. The tool he's holding there is sort of a little multi-pack of Torx screwdrivers. Most of the screws on our particular Quadrajet have Torx heads on them, and there's a couple different sizes that get used. So all he had to do was rotate that rod just to the right position, and then he could just pull it right out. So now he's using his little straight slot screwdriver to remove the butterflies. This is among the things that was not strictly necessary as part of the rebuild, but we didn't necessarily know which all parts needed to be disassembled for the full rebuild, and B, as you can see, there's some surface rust there, and it gave us a good chance to knock that off so that the carburetor looked better when we put it back together. Okay, with that out of the way, you got a little bitty straight slot screwdriver to remove this metal piece. Pretty sure this holds in a couple of metering rods that are sort of dangling from it. All right, here they come. Yep, see those nice little rods? And they're basically just sitting there. You can just pull them right off. There's some rubber O-rings on this part that you'll get new ones with your rebuild kit. We also chose to replace this vacuum hose. This size of hose was extremely cheap at O'Reilly's. Turned out that this gasket around that blue connector was broken. I think it broke from old age. As you can see, now we're pulling out some springs. These springs aren't the same from end to end, so you have to pay attention to, they kind of shrink down at one end. So as you're taking them out, pay attention, to how they were sitting in there. Now other springs, like the one you just pulled out there, they're the same both ways, so there's probably not any up or down. Now he's able to get that plate out. It's just sitting in there. You can just slide it out. Okay, another spring. Now he's going to take out the screw that holds down the connector for the solenoid. And now with the carburetor laying upside down, there's a couple of screws that you can get to from the bottom that need to come out as part of the disassembly. That bottom gasket's a pretty thick gasket. I mean, it's almost 1/4 of an inch thick, and it was stuck on our carburetor pretty good. We were just being careful as we took it off, trying to get it to come off whole as much as possible. Although when it comes off, I think you're going to see that some of it did stick to the carburetor. We had to scrape that off. Back to the Torx screwdriver to get a couple more screws off that sort of got unveiled by pulling that gasket off. And here we go. We're going to separate the middle body from the bottom. And naturally, there's a gasket that goes between those two pieces, and now he's going to get that off. You can see that if you do it semi-carefully, there's no need to tear it up. I mean, it'll come off in one piece. It took us a little while to figure out that this piece that he's removing now is a threaded piece. It wasn't clear how it was held on. It doesn't have a screw head, but it does have to be unscrewed. It has flat sides, and that's why you can grab it with a pair of pliers and just sort of twist. Yeah, that solenoid came right out. Now he's pulling out the float. Your rebuild kit should come with a new float. And I'm pointing out the needle there. The needle's kind of interesting because it's just suspended from the float with this little hook that isn't even hooked into anything. It just kind of sits there and is held in position, I guess, by the thing that it is sitting in rather than the hook that it's suspended from. More springs. Found an interesting use for a kitchen knife here. we didn't have anything that was wide enough, flat enough, and thin enough to take this particular part out. Okay, that was a little metal copper ring used for a seal. Okay, pulling another. That little magnet on the end of a stick came in handy any number of times. Helped us get parts out of little places where our fingers were far too big to go. Here's the comic relief part of the video. We're trying to kill a spider with the tiny end of a screwdriver. And the spider survived. He got away. Now we're going to take the choke apart. This model happens to be an electric choke. Now to further disassemble it, we have to get in there with our Torx screwdriver. Okay, and there's a nice little rod that, until that point we couldn't get it out, but having disassembled it to this point, it came out very easily. How do you like that fuel line sticking out of our carburetor? Somebody that owned the car before us thought it was a good idea to cut through the fuel line with a hacksaw. So we're really getting down to the last few pieces now. And it's time to take the fuel filter out. Now our old fuel filter wasn't visibly dirty, but the kit came with a new one, so we just used it. But it did not come with the part that he's poking on there. It's sort of a one-way check valve that keeps fuel from being able to flow backwards out of the carburetor. So we had to reuse that part. Now these are the idle mixture screws that on this particular model of carburetor you couldn't even get to from the factory. Somebody previous to us had to take maybe a Dremel or something and cut out the openings to get to those screws. And they're technically not screws, that's why he was having to spin them with pliers. We took all of our parts, put them in a basket, and dipped them in the kitty litter bucket. The kitty litter bucket was perfect.